The Epstein files have just been released by the Justice Department. We are sifting through them now, and we're going to bring you what we find as we and our teams find it throughout this hour. Let's get off the sidelines and head into the arena. My panel is here, and we're joined by CNN Crime and Justice correspondent Katelyn Polantz and CNN senior White House correspondent Kristen Holmes. Katelyn, first to you. I know that our teams are digging through these files. Is there anything you can tell us so far about what we've learned?
It's called the Epstein Library that's being released by the Justice Department. And Casey, it does include quite a lot of different types of materials about Jeffrey Epstein, some of which is already out there and some of which is very likely to have never seen the light of day before. The categories right now that the Justice Department is saying they're releasing the records on, and they have them all available for the public to view. That includes court records, Freedom of Information releases, some of the things that have already been out there, as well as documents that the House Oversight Committee has obtained and has been releasing, as well as the big part of this, the Justice Department's own disclosures. I'm looking at it now, and it's really extensive. There's multiple pages here. There's a lot of different lists of what's being put out in the public view. Some of that includes Epstein files that are being required by this law to be transparent by today. It looks to me like there are very large files here, data sets of information, and also some things we haven't seen before. Things we have seen before. Things like video from the Bureau of Prisons from when Jeffrey Epstein was in that facility, as well as audio of Ghislaine Maxwell speaking to the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche earlier this year in a taped interview. So all of that is collected. We are going to be looking through it to see what's new. But Casey, I was just reviewing what is already out there. There is a great deal already out there, but what is in this is also likely to be very sensitive. Even just in reading the end of the trial against co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell, there is extensive discussion about the victims and how severe these crimes were. Girls as young as 14 being recruited from single-family homes largely to become people that Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were both grooming through enticing them to be massage therapists or to be the recipients of massages. And there is extensive evidence already out there in the public record as to how great and vast this conspiracy went, how it existed over many, many years. In addition to that, I'm also looking for especially how the Justice Department has handled Epstein and Maxwell in the 20-some years of knowing that this conspiracy existed until Maxwell was convicted of crimes in 2021. That is something that we haven't seen a full autopsy of. We've seen bits and pieces of it, but seeing exactly how those choices were made, how the internal communications may have played out within the Justice Department to choose not to prosecute Jeffrey Epstein very severely in 2007 or 2008, and then to choose to indict him and Ghislaine Maxwell again in 2019, 2020, 2021. Those are all things to look for in these records. It's going to be a long night, and as the Justice Department has made clear, today is not the only day of this release. There could be many more documents to come for the weeks ahead. Casey?
Weeks indeed. Kristen Holmes, to that point, I mean, how has the White House been bracing for this?
The White House doesn't want to talk about this. They have been doing everything they can for the last several months to try and distance themselves from this story, but it is the story that they just cannot shake. And now we're looking at day one of what is expected to be a brand new chapter in the entire Epstein saga, now that we have these documents. And this is going to continue for time and time again, because the fact that it will involve President Trump in some way. Now, one of the things I hear from these White House officials, they are convinced that there is not going to be some kind of smoking gun in these documents that show President Trump did something illegal. They have argued to me time and time again that if there was something like that in these files, that it would have been brought out a long time ago, particularly under a Democratic administration. However, they are also keenly aware that anything, any document, any part of these files that shows or it reinforces the relationship President Trump had at one time with Jeffrey Epstein is likely to dominate any media coverage. It's going to eclipse anything else that President Trump is trying to do or is actually doing. And they have no appetite for this. And there's also someone else who has no appetite for this, and it's President Trump. And that was very clear when he was asked questions or when he was delivering remarks earlier today. And a man who almost always takes questions did this at the end of it.
I really don't want to soil it up by asking questions, even questions that are very fair questions that I'd love to answer. So I think we have to just stop right here. I don't want to be asking questions having to do with anything else. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you about your insurance idea, Mr. President.
Again, this is a White House, this is a president who is very aware of what is happening today with regards to the Epstein files being released. So it certainly seems like he did not want to have any part of that when reporters in the room were certainly going to ask questions.
They certainly were. All right, Kristen Holmes, Caitlin Polantz, I think you'll likely be standing by for us as we sift through all of this, but I do appreciate your reporting here off the top. Elie Honig is with us from New York as well. He's our senior legal analyst. Elie, can you remind us how we got here? And I actually, I'd like to kind of set you up with what Ro Khanna, one of the congressmen on the House Oversight Committee, had to say today about what we may see here. Obviously, they have been going through these documents to redact sensitive information about victims and other things. Let me show you what Khanna said, and we'll talk about it on the other side. Take a look.
Anyone who tampers with these documents or conceals documents or engages in excessive redaction will be prosecuted because of obstruction of justice. We will prosecute individuals regardless of whether they're the Attorney General or a career or political appointee.
Elie, can I just get you to give us your legal expertise on what that could mean?
Sure. So we're here, Casey, because Congress passed a law, overwhelming margin, 427-1 in the House, unanimous in the Senate, signed by Donald Trump 30 days ago. That law gave the Justice Department 30 days to turn over, and I quote the law, all of DOJ's documents relating to the investigations and prosecutions of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, the law does have some exceptions in it. It allows DOJ to withhold documents if they relate to victim identities, if they relate to ongoing criminal investigations, or if they might undercut our national security or our foreign diplomacy. Now, as to Representative Khanna's point there, it would be obstruction of justice if somebody, for example, destroyed evidence or altered it or tampered with it intentionally. There's no evidence any of that has happened at this point. So I think he's thinking sort of speculatively and into the future. So at this point, they've made the first production. That's the link that's now available that Caitlin Polantz and others are going through. But again, important to note, the Deputy Attorney General this morning, Todd Blanche, said this is actually not the whole production. He said this will be hundreds of thousands of pages, and we will continue to produce more over the coming weeks. Technically, that's not what the law says. The law says all the documents today, but DOJ apparently has just not been able to do that.
Remarkable. Elie, stand by for me. I want to go back to Caitlin Polantz because she has been poring over these documents as we have been talking. And Caitlin, I understand you're seeing some photographs as part of this. I don't think we're prepared yet to show them to our audiences. We're working on that, but please do tell us what you've learned.
Yeah, and we're also going to be cautious about describing what's in the photographs as we're seeing them, given the sensitivities, so many sensitivities around this issue. But what I can say here is, in the data sets that are being put out by the Justice Department, there are many, many photos, and they are stripped of context. They are just images. Many of them do show Jeffrey Epstein, of course. They would be from the files around him. There are also images of Ghislaine Maxwell. But this is the sort of thing that people will be clicking on, seeing, that you'll see around as people go photo by photo. I mean, some of these, there's clearly hundreds of them. They're posted in dozens of pages of data on the Justice Department website, and they don't say where they're from, why they were taken, where the location of the photos are. So a lot of those context clues, that's the sort of reporting and questions that we'll need to follow up on in understanding what the meaning of these photos might be. But it's not just photos, there are other documents as well. Some of them, like I mentioned before, are going to be the sorts of things we've seen already out in the public sphere. A lot of the audio tape and the documents around Ghislaine Maxwell speaking with Todd Blanche while she is serving her time in federal prison. Some of the documents of the communications from the Attorney General saying that she wants to have a release of the documents, something that has dogged the Justice Department over many months this year. But there is data here, and it does appear that there is information that's coming out from the Justice Department that is new. Exactly what that is, we're going to report and look very closely at what it is. But there's a lot here, and it's accessible to the public.